Hi, Golden Throwback Recap here. Today, we're diving into the first ever episode of the Rockford Files called The Kirchhoff Case. Spoilers ahead, so watch out, and let's get started. Jim is following Travis Buckman on the freeway when Buckman pulls over, exits his truck, and heads toward the ocean. Picking up a fishing rod as a ruse, Jim follows, but loses sight of him. He approaches a sunbather to ask if she saw a man in a cowboy hat pass by. She playfully teases him before admitting she was too absorbed in her book to notice. Frustrated, Jim leaves the beach, but the sunbather catches up to him in her convertible and invites him back to her place for a drink. The drink is drugged, and when Jim regains consciousness, minus his pants, he finds Buckman holding him at gunpoint. Jim admits to Buckman and the sunbather that he is a private investigator working on the murder case of the Kirchhoffs, a wealthy couple, before managing to escape. Jim consults with his client, Larry Kirchhoff. Kirchhoff hired him to prove his innocence in the murder of his parents, a crime the police and public suspect him of, though there isn't enough evidence for a conviction. Jim dislikes Larry and is skeptical about his innocence, while Larry remains indifferent to Jim's opinion. Before leaving the sunbather's beach house, Jim snapped a photo of her, which he develops in Kirchhoff's darkroom. Larry identifies her as someone his father knew from the tennis club. Using a guest pass obtained under false pretenses, Jim tracks the woman, Tanya Baker, and learns she had been having an affair with Charles Kirchhoff. Tanya reveals that she and Buckman, who was Mrs. Kirchhoff's lover, were working together to gather incriminating evidence against Larry, believing each other to be innocent. Jim sets up a meeting with Tanya for more information, but receives an anonymous call that evening with another lead. The unnamed woman gives him an address to meet her that night. However, the meeting is a trap, and Jim is abducted by a group of men and taken to a warehouse where they beat him. A gravelly-voiced man warns him to stop investigating the Kirchhoff murders, claiming Larry is guilty, but hinting that Jim's snooping could expose other sensitive dealings. With reluctant help from Detective Becker, Jim identifies the man as Muzzy Vanette, a former prizefighter turned racketeer now working as a labor organizer for the BRW, a major union. Using a mix of deception and a willingness to take more hits, Jim arranges a meeting with Al Dancer, the union leader. He shares his theory that Vanette freelanced the murder of Mrs. Kirchhoff on her husband's behalf, and offers Dancer an opportunity to distance the union from the crime. After assisting in capturing Vanette, Jim has another meeting with Larry Kirchhoff. Larry had promised a $20,000 bonus if Jim uncovered the truth about the murders. Jim concludes that while Charles Kirchhoff arranged to have his wife killed, Larry murdered his father. Larry refuses to pay the full amount, but agrees to half the bonus, albeit with a dubious "check is in the mail" promise. Later, while spending time with Tanya Baker, Jim notices a newspaper headline. It reveals that Larry confessed to murdering his father, framing it as retribution for his father's role in his mother's death, a detail likely to win him public sympathy. Realizing he won't be seeing the rest of his payment, Jim looks for a cheap spot where he and Tanya can grab a hot dog. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you remember this episode of the Rockford Files? What stood out to you about how Jim tackled this tricky case, especially his bold confrontation with the union leader? Did he handle it the right way, or would you have expected a different approach? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.